Hilchos Hatumos Perek Arba Asar, the laws of the remaining primary sources of impurity, chapter 14. We're in a little bit of a rush today, and I'll soon explain why, but I cannot pass up the opportunity to talk about how special today is. Today is special for three reasons. First of all, on the national Jewish level, it's Tu B'Shvat, 15th day of Shvat, the New Year for trees. And New Year for trees doesn't just mean for the botanical or agricultural elements of our lives, but for ourselves as well. Ki ha'adam eitz hasad, the Torah says, man is like a tree. A New Year for trees means a new year for our growth, time to take commitments, a time to decide how we're going to be growing in the next year. And that's the reason why it's special on a national level. Then, on a communal level, here in Sherman Oaks, that's why we're in a rush today, we're in between two bar mitzvahs. On the same day, we're having two bar mitzvahs. We had one in the main minyan, the Cohen family came here, and now at 9 o'clock, so that's our time, 9 o'clock, we're, by hook or by crook, we're done the chapter, is coming another bar mitzvah family. So that makes it special today for this Chabad community. More specifically, it's special for this class, our Rambam class, and that's because we're exactly 1 year away from the Siyum HaRambam, from concluding the entire Rambam. We're on the 3-year cycle, one chapter a day, and it's going to be finishing next year, Tu B'Shvat 5786. So here we are 1 year out. That means we've been doing this for close to 2 years. It's a real testimony to our dedication. And we ask Hashem that He should bless us with the health and the spirit, take us to the end of this project, to see it to the finish line, to conclude literally studying the halachas of the entire Torah. And so, now that we appreciate how special this day is on all levels, individual, communal, national, let's get right to it. So, what is this chapter about? This continues the topic that we started yesterday about doubts. What happens when you have a doubtful scenario that develops around impurity? So, in certain cases, like we saw yesterday, 6 cases of doubt, we rule stringently, to the point that we'll even burn truma if it comes into contact with this doubtful source of impurity. Today, and tomorrow, and really the next days as well, we're going to be exploring what the Rambam calls the 12 doubts that the sages were lenient about. 12 scenarios of doubtful impurity, where if they develop, you go leniently. Today we're going to get the list of all 12, plus we're going to explore the first 4 in detail. Tomorrow we're going to elaborate on the next 8, and then after that, on specific themes we're going to get even more into related to these doubts. Let's get right to it. Halacha Aleph, Shneim Asar Sveikos Tiyado Chachamim. There are 12 doubts which the sages declared impure. These 12 boxes here on the screen, you can follow along in the pictures. The Eluhain, they are the following. Number 1, Sveik Mayim She'uvim LaMikveh. When you're in doubt whether there is Mayim She'uvim, it's drawn water, it's not fresh water, in a mikveh. We saw in chapter 9 that Mayim She'uvim could be a source of impurity. A person whose head and most of his body enters in such a body of water becomes impure. What if you're in doubt? You don't know if there's Mayim She'uvim or not, and hence you don't know if you're impure or not. So we go leniently. Beis Sveik Tumat Safa Al Pnei Mayim. You have a doubt of a source of impurity floating on the water. A mouse is like a sheretz. If it's dead, source of impurity. What happens if you're in a pool and there's a sheretz there and you don't know if you touched it or not? We're going to rule leniently. Number 3, Sveik Mashkin L'Tamei Acherim. When you're in doubt about liquids in terms of transferring their impurity to something else. You don't know if liquids touched something or not. You're going to go leniently. If their own impurity is in doubt, we're going to be stringent. We'll declare them impure out of doubt. Dalid Sveik Hayodayim. When you're in doubt about hands impurity, and here it's bein l'tumas atzman, bein l'tamei acherim, whether it's declaring themselves to be impure, transmitting their impurity to others, bein l'taras yodayim mitum asan, or in regards to becoming pure. You don't know if you washed it properly, and now you're in doubt if it's pure or not. You always go leniently. Hey, number 5, Sveik divrei sofrim, a doubt arising from rabbinical impurities, like you saw in chapter 8. A person who eats impure foods becomes impure. What if there's a doubt about whether you ate impure foods? That's going to be declared lenient. Vav Sveik HaChulin. If a doubt arises concerning chulin, regular food that somebody decides to eat at the standard of what's called oichle chulehen betara, they eat their chulin foods at a state of high purity, and they have a doubt about their products, they go leniently. Zayin Sveik HaKorbanos. When you're in doubt about sacrifices that have a direct impact on impurity and purity, like we've seen. Sometimes the way to get out of impurity is simply go to the mikveh. Other times you go to the mikveh and bring a sacrifice. So what if a person is in doubt about multiple potential sacrifices that he has to bring for impurities? What do? You always go leniently. You always let him bring less rather than more. Ches Sveik Negoyim. A doubt arising about a lesion. You have a lesion on your skin. You don't know, is it tzaras or not? Many times, in certain cases, at least if it's before you come to the Kohen, if that's when the doubt develops, you go leniently. Tes Sveik Oiver V'Oimed. Number 9 is the doubt of the person who is passing by and standing. This is also referring to tzaras. We saw that if a mitzayra stands under a tree, like a corpse, he spreads his impurity to everything under the tree. If somebody walks by, he becomes impure. So what if a guy is not sure? Did I go under the tree? Did I not? Or the other way around. If a mitzayra stops, if someone else is under a tree, and a mitzayra walks by and stops under the tree, he also transfers his impurity to the guy. So what happens if the mitzayra is walking by? You don't know if he stopped or not. These are sfeik oiver v'oimed. Again, you go leniently. Yud sfeik shratzim. A doubt with regards to rodents, and we're going to see this means somebody threw a rodent onto a pile of stuff, and you don't know if it touched the pile or not. Different scenarios like that. You find a rodent that could have potentially come into contact with food, and you don't know whether it did or not. You always go leniently. Yud Aleph, number 11, sfeik reshus harabim, a doubt that occurs in a public domain. Whenever you're in doubt about whether you touched something impure, if it was in a public domain, you always go leniently, versus we'll see if it's a private domain, you go stringently. Yud Beis, sfeik shtei reshuyos. Number 12 is when you're in doubt about two domains. You have a public next to a private domain, and you don't know whether you touched something that was impure in a private domain or public domain. The point is the doubt is about the interrelation between both domains. You can also go leniently. And again, the first 4 are going to be discussed today. The next 8 are tomorrow. So we begin with number 1. Halacha beis sfeik mayim she'uvin lamikveh ketzad. What does it mean that you might have a doubt about mayim she'uvin that ended up in the mikveh and the rabbis declare it pure? It goes like this: Shleisha lugin mayim she'uvin shenaflu lamikveh pasluhu. If 3 log, each log is about 12 ounces, so it's called 36 ounces, falls into a mikveh of mayim she'uvin, pasluhu, the rabbis say it's disqualified. Safek naflu, oilay naflu. What if you're in doubt? You don't know. Did they fall in or not? Va'afilu naflu, or maybe you know that water fell in, but you don't know how much water fell in. Safek yesh bahem kashir, oyein bahem. You're in doubt whether there's the proper amount or the improper amount to make it impure or not. Sveikay tahar. In all these cases, you go leniently out of doubt. V'harei hamikveh bekashrusay, and the mikveh remains kosher. Now, the ein moiden le b'mikveh zeh litbil v'lases tares lechatchila. We're not going to go. There's already a doubtful element to this mikveh, so we're not going to go and tell people initially to go dip in this mikveh and then to go touch pure things. It's only that mim taval v'asat ha'aresav tahiris. It's if you went to the mikveh and then you touched pure things, and now you realize, oh, there was a problem with the mikveh. Now we'll go and examine. If it was a doubt, then we're going to retroactively say that it's all pure. Halacha gimel, doubt number 2. Sveik tumat safa al pnei hamayim ketzad. What does it mean that the rabbis purified a doubt when there's impurity floating on the water? It goes like this: sheretz, you have a dead rodent. It's an avatuma, primary source of impurity. Shal yatzaf al pnei hamayim, and it's floating on top of a surface of water in a private domain, say the commentaries. Bein shahayu hamayim bekelim oy bekarkais, whether the water is in a utensil or it's in the ground, natural pool. V'yarad lamayim, somebody comes into the water. Afilu ein sham elam malay adam v'tuma. Even if the place is so narrow, it can only hold the person and the tuma. It's pretty much certain that you touched the sheretz, but you don't know for sure. Harei zatar, you're pure. Ad sheyeda bevadai shanaga, until you know for sure that you had definitely touched it. And here the commentaries explain why they said it was a private domain. If it's a public domain, so anyways, one of the doubts is shfeik reshus harabim. Doubtful in public domain is always pure. Here, the novelty is that even though you're in a private domain, we don't typically follow the rule of doubts in a private domain make you impure. Rather, here we say that you are pure. And there's a special limud, derivation from the verses, where it's clear that only on land this tumah applies, not in the water. Anyway, see the commentaries for more details on this. However, major caveat, when did the rabbis say that a floating source of impurity, when in doubt, go leniently, is only for rodents, with that special verse. But any other source of impurity floating on the water would make you impure. Now says the Rambam, interesting thing. What happens if you're in the mikveh, or you're in the pool, and there's a source of impurity, a rodent that's floating, but it's floating somewhat attached to another human being? V'chol hanislin, if that floating rodent is hanging from a person says holding it by its tail, let's say. V'hanigrarin, or it's kind of being dragged after a person. Then, if you, the guy in the pool, is in doubt whether you touched it, harehen kimunachim. We don't treat it as floating, we treat it as stationary, placed on the ground, and it makes you impure. It's not called tumat safa, it's not a floating impurity. Halacha dalid, sheretz, shahayamunach bikli. You have a rodent, a dead rodent again, is sitting in a utensil. Ukli tzaf al pnei hamayim, and that utensil is floating on the water. Okay, lots of mice here, gets a little gory, not for the faint of heart. Oy shehaya munach al hameis, oy al hanevela. Or maybe there was a rodent floating on a dead body. I didn't put that here, but a nevela here, on a carcass. There's a carcass floating in the water, and a mouse, dead mouse, is on top. Even if the carcass or the corpse that it's lying on is basically disintegrated, decomposed. Or it's placed onto a drop of semen that's floating on the water. Those last words, hatzafin al pnei hamayim, goes back on everything. The carcass, the dead body, or the semen. In other words, it's not floating directly on the water, it's floating on another source of impurity, which is floating on the water. It's considered to be stationary on the ground, in which case we declare a doubt in a private domain to be impure, as we're going to be explained. This is not called tumatzafa. It's not floating. Floating means literally on the water. Relative to itself, it's on a very stationary surface. It's in a jar. It's on a nevela. It's on a utensil. So it's having a good time. What happens if you have a rodent on top of a rodent? So really, they're both rodents. They're both the same type of impurity. This we consider to be a thick unit of impurity, one big impurity, and we rule it pure out of doubt. If you're in doubt, you can go leniently. What if it's on top of a utensil or water that's meant to be used for the para aduma? And then that water is floating on the water. Here, we're in a doubt. Is that considered to be stationary or not? In other words, does the ash that's in the water consider it to be a new entity, and now it's resting on the ash, not on the water? Or do we look at the water as the primary factor, and it's resting on the water? So since we're in doubt about the doubt, so when in doubt, you can rule leniently. Halacha hey, kederech shetiaru chachamim sfeik tumatzafa al pnei hamayim, bein bekelim, bein bekarkois. The same way the rabbis, when it came to a source of impurity floating on the water, no matter if it's floating in a utensil or in the ground, the rabbis are always lenient. In the same way, they declared that if there's a doubtful source of purity floating on the water, whether it's floating in a utensil or on the ground, it's going to be pure. What does that mean? Ketzat. How do we have a source of purity floating? Areva shehi tmei meis. It's a pretty detailed case, but try to follow it, okay? You have a big bowl, which itself came into contact with a corpse. So it's tmei meis. That means that if it touches truma, truma is disqualified. The kikar truma karuch b'siv ay b'niyar v'nasan b'seicha. Now there happens to be a loaf of bread, which is truma, but it's wrapped in some paper or in some palm bast, and it's sitting in the bowl. And since that paper is an intervening substance, the bread is not becoming tameh from the bowl. Then what happens? This bowl is sitting in the open air. It's raining today, yeah? Raining yesterday also. So this bowl is sitting outside. Rain falls into the bowl. V'nismales, the bowl fills up. The bread begins to float. V'nifshat haniyar, and now the paper around the loaf unfolded. So that now the bread is not touching the bowl, it's floating on the water in the bowl. And the paper is dividing. Beautiful division between the bread and the water. And now comes the doubt, the suffix nagat tzidei ba'areva. Suffix loy naga, now you're in doubt if the open end of the loaf of bread touched the side of the bowl, which is tmei meis, and it became impure or not. So because the source of purity in this case, the loaf of bread, is floating on the water, it's not called stationary. So the same way non-stationary things that are impure do not transmit impurity out of doubt, so non-stationary things that are pure don't contract impurity also out of doubt while they're floating. Halacha vav, we have the ancient wine press. There was what's called the pressing pit, and then you have the wine pit. It says the Rambam sheretz shenimtza tzaf al gabe boir b'sei chagas. A rodent is found floating on the pit where the wine collected, inside the gas, which is the larger wine press. So the Rambam rules, litruma, if the issue, or if the doubt, is about the wine itself, the wine that's been collecting in here, and is spilling out to here, and we don't know if it touched the rodent or not, sveikoi tame. So now, since it's a question about liquids, and what did we say in the list of the 12 doubts, that liquid, when it comes to referring to its own impurity, is always impure out of doubt. So sveikoi tame, this is a doubt where you rule it impure. However, if the question is about the workers of the wine press, did they touch the source of impurity, sveikoi toher, then for them, it's them versus the rodent. The rodent is floating. So they're going to be pure out of doubt, because it's a floating source of impurity. Halacha Zayin, now we move on to the next category. Sveik mashkin, letame achedim toher, or letumas atzman tame. We said that when in doubt about liquids, if it's about them passing on their impurity, that's where we're lenient. We say pure. If it's becoming impure, then we say stringent. What does this mean? Ketzad. Says the Rambam. Haya makil biyadeh. A person has a stick in his hand. Ubereishay mashkin tmei. And the top is very wet, very moist, very damp. It's got some actual impure liquids on it. Uzrakan. He throws the stick with the liquid on top of it, l'seich kikares tohires, into an area full of pure loaves. No idea why he's doing this, but that's what he did. Safek nagu, and you're in doubt whether the impure liquids touch the loaves or not. Hareelu tohires, they're going to be pure. Because this is tumas mashkin l'tamei achedim, this is liquid making other things impure. It's, when in doubt, you go leniently. V'cheinim nistapik lo yim nagu mashkin tmein, b'kli zeh eloi nagu. You have impure liquids, you don't know if it touched the utensil or not. Out of doubt, the utensil is pure. In the third case, a more novel case, you have impure liquid, and you don't know if they touched other pure liquid. They didn't touch them. The other liquid is pure. Why? Because you look at it from the perspective of the impure liquids. This is a case of impure liquids trying to make other things impure, in which case you always go leniently. If you looked at it from the angle of the pure liquids, you would say this is a safek mashkin l'tumas atzman. This is a doubt whether liquid is impure. And from their perspective, they should become impure. But here we look at it from the impure liquids perspective, and we make them pure. The case where mashkin l'tumas atzman would exist is if it wasn't liquid that was the source of impurity, but something else. Avol tameh shepashat yadei ragle lebein mashkin tohirin. But if a person who is impure stretches his foot or his hand into some pure liquids, maybe here, this is more for the next halacha, but just take a look. Yeah, a person puts his hand in to pure liquids. Or he throws an impure loaf amongst pure liquids. Safek naga b'mashkin, safek le naga. You don't know if the person or the loaf touched the liquid or not. These are mashkin l'tumas atzman, right? The liquid is in doubt whether it became pure, and it's not from another liquid. It's from another entity, person or loaf. Therefore, they're impure, and the same will apply in all similar situations. Halacha ches, chavis shimalea mashkin. You have a barrel full of liquid, pure liquid. Upashat atalmeas yodel comes an impure person, puts his hand into the airspace. Safek naga b'mashkin, safek le naga. You don't know if he touched the liquid or not. Hamashkin tmei. This is mashkin l'tumas atzman. They are doubtfully impure. But the barrel is pure. She'ein sveik hamashkin mitame. Because the liquid inside of it, which is only impure out of doubt, cannot transmit its impurity out of doubt. Forget the person. You have liquids that's doubtfully impure, fell into a barrel. The barrel is pure. Had the liquids been totally, certainly impure, what would happen? They would make the jug impure, because it's a kli cheres, it's pottery, it becomes impure from the inside. But over here, since the liquid themselves are only impure out of doubt, they don't transmit to others. If there were other liquid in that barrel and somehow they didn't mix, they remain pure. Because they can only become impure from the barrel. The barrel is not becoming impure in this case, therefore they're good. But of course, if the liquid's mixed, so all the liquid in the barrel will become impure out of doubt, because somewhere in this mixture is doubtfully impure liquids, which are impure. Either way, the barrel remains pure. Same if the liquids would have fallen into an oven. So the oven and the bread inside of it will be pure. Again, it's mashkin l'tamei achedim. Liquids trying to get other things impure. They remain pure. Halacha tes hamerabetz beisai. A person is, we would call this mopping, but not really. They used to have, dirt floors in the ancient times, and they would kind of sprinkle or moisturize the floor so that the dust would settle. That's called merabetz. And you're using impure water. Or you're just sprinkling water around the house. Impure water. And near the place where you were mopping, moisturizing, sprinkling was pure products. Safik nitzu alein, safik le nitzu. You're in doubt. Did the water sprinkle on them or not? Sveikotar, they're in doubt. It's again a doubt of a liquid trying to get other things impure. Mashkin latame acherim is always pure. Halacha yod zilef mashkin teirin utmein masech habayis. You sprinkled both pure and non-pure water in a home. Then you come to a loaf, you examine it, you see water on it, liquid on it. You don't know. Pure liquid, impure liquid. Natla, you took it, v'nishal aleha, and you went to a sage to ask him the law. It is pure, again, we consider this to be a doubt whether the liquid made something else impure, and therefore it's pure. But if you left the loaf to dry, and then you went to go and ask what the law is, now there's a doubt, and now a kind of a doubt where there's no liquid involved anymore, it's totally dried up. And any doubts in a private domain are impure, as we'll explain. There's no liquid. Liquid makes room for leniency. There's liquid over here. All you have is a loaf, which you're in doubt whether it's pure or impure. A loaf, private domain, done, you're impure. Halacha Yud Aleph Sveik Yodayim. Bein lihistame, bein l'tamei acherim, bein l'taharasan tahar. When in doubt about hands. So we said, whether we're talking about them becoming impure, making others impure, becoming pure. In all cases of doubt, we go lenient. And the Rambam describes each one, Ketzat. What does this look like? Your hands are both pure, they're both green. And there are two impure loaves, that's a red there, in front of you. Safik naga, safik le naga. Simple. You don't know, did my hands touch the loaves or not? That's called Sveik Yodayim Lihistame, that's the first case. Hands about becoming impure, we rule leniently. Or, second case, your hands were impure, that's red. In front of you is two pure loaves of truma. Your hands would make truma disqualified. Safik naga, safik le naga. You don't know, did I touch or not? That's Sveik Yodayim Litame, right? Whether it made something else impure, also lenient. Or you had one pure hand, one impure hand. And in front of you is two pure loaves. Okay, it's a mistake here. They should both be pure. Naga ba'achas mehem. You know you touched one of them. Safik batmea naga, safik batahira naga. But I don't know which hand I used to touch it. Or another case. Your hands are both pure. And here you have one loaf pure, one loaf impure. That's how we'll do it. Okay, we'll do a matching game over here. These two coming together, two pure hands, one impure loaf, one pure loaf. You touch one of them, you don't know. The pure one or the impure one. Or this last case over here. One hand is pure, one hand is impure, one loaf is pure, one loaf is impure. You touch them both. You don't know, did my impure hand touch the impure loaf and the pure hand touch the pure loaf? Then it's all good. Or it's all bad. The impure hand touched the pure loaf, made it impure. The pure hand touched the impure loaf, made itself impure. So in all these cases, since it's a doubt, we always go leniently. So the hands remain in their status quo, and the loaves remain in their status quo. Same thing as the last case of Safik Yodayim Lehistahir, L'Taharasan. Your hands were impure. You put them in a mikveh, or you did Netilas Yadayim, you washed your hands. Safik Shamayim Shatiyadam Bahem, Kshidim Layadayim, Safik Shem Sulim. You're in doubt whether the water that you used is kosher for the hands or not kosher for the hands. Safik Yesh Bem Kashir, Safik Ein Bem Kashir. Or even if it's good water, but you don't know. Enough quantity or not enough quantity. Safik Shayadavar Chaytitz Al Yadai, Safik Lehaya. Or everything was fine. The water was fine, the quantity was fine, but your hands might not have been fine. Maybe there was a chatzitza, intervening substance. Hariyadav Tahiris, in all these cases, the hands are pure. Sveik Yadayim L'Tahir. Halacha Yud Beis. One final law here. Hoysa Yadei Achas Tmeya. One hand was impure. You don't know which one was impure. We tell him, we tell him, don't do anything, don't touch anything, till you wash both of your hands. But after the fact, Sveik Yadayim, doubt about hands, if you touch something with one of the hands, you don't know was it the impure hand or the pure hand. So we're going to say that it's pure and you're good.